ladies. How's everybody?
Good morning.
Good. Great.
We'll start off by congratulating Melissa on the new addition to her family. We're so excited.
Thank you. It's been wonderful.
I'm jealous, but I'm gonna let that go. I thought it would be good to kind of get together today and sort of talk a little bit about some of those challenges that we have as parents that, I don't know, like the challenges that don't show up in parenting magazines or the solutions that don't show up in parenting magazines. I was thinking about, and I've mentioned it before, my thing where I would only buy white socks for the kids in my house. The kids in my house, my children, also called my children. Because if the seam to the sock was in the wrong place, they could not wear the socks. Which totally makes sense to me. But I hear that other people don't have that problem in their house.
I know it's like these things that are like seem like little nuances. They could like make or break your morning of trying to get ready for school or go to an appointment. And it's not funny, but sometimes like you think about all of those little things and how you have to have that mental energy to make sure this one socks, that one can't stand this kind of texture on, they're touching their skin or, like it's itchy and, somebody else don't mind that. It's a lot to try to navigate all these little needs that can turn into like this breakdown in the morning. And you can even check all those boxes and try to do all those things right. And then you still have that trouble in the morning, like you set out clothes the night before, made them choose what their outfit was going to be, and everybody was on board with what they were wearing. I thought, like when we went through that thing, the girls were born first and thinking, this is a girl thing. This is because they're girls and they want to change their mind. No, it had nothing to do with whether they were a girl or not.
And I love those ideas that they come up with in like the parenting magazines or, the organizational magazines where people have those really cool looking hangers in their kids' closet with like a different day of the week, and they get their outfits together and they put them in there, and then it's supposed to be like there's no fighting because this is what you've decided that you're going to wear, and just go get that outfit. And even like you had mentioned, the pick your outfit the night before, and then in the morning it's like, I don't want to wear that, I hate that, like it's your favorite shirt, you haven't taken it off for like 3 weeks. We went through a time in my house where every night or every week, probably once a week, I would make catfish, and kids loved it, and they'd always ask for more. And then one day I put it in front of my daughter and she's like, I'm not eating that. I just made it for you last week and you wanted seconds. I have never eaten. I do not want that. I do not eat fish. No. And, like as a parent, like you don't know. I didn't know. The way I was raised is like, and honestly, I did not have money and I didn't have time to go make her. I certainly wasn't going to go make her a special meal. It was something that they've been eating for weeks and weeks and weeks. No, I'm not eating that. All right, sit there. You're going to eat it. It's dinner. Eat it. Not eating it. Never ate fish ever again. From 1 week, eating it, one time eating it for like, however long, all the time. I want more. Could you make that? To I'm not eating that. And you just have no idea especially if it comes out of the clear blue. I mean, luckily nowadays people have access to more information, to better information. But, back in the day when my kids were little, it was like, oh, your kid is willful or your kid's just being stubborn. You know, I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea that it was like a thing. And I have like sensory things myself. I'm very weird. I'll eat like onions, but not cooked onions because they're slimy to me. As a matter of fact, I did the same thing to my mom where I would eat like cream of mushroom soup. And then all of a sudden one day I was like, no, that's slimy. I'm not eating it. So, you don't find solutions to things like that. People don't talk about things like that in um in parenting magazines.
And a lot of us were raised with what was on your plate was what you were going to eat. So
Mhm.
when we start having those struggles with our kids and we talk to our parents or aunts or cousins, anybody, they're like, oh, you need to make them do it. They need to sit there until they eat it. And then tomorrow, if they still haven't ate it, that's what they get for lunch. That's kind of how things were. And they don't work like that. It doesn't it doesn't transfer over like that's the solution because it's not. A lot of
Yeah.
times when they're done with something, they're done. That there's no going back. We had one child who actually is allergic to fish. Another child decided they were allergic to fish because their sibling was, and it had nothing to do with them. So they wouldn't eat fish anymore. I'm like, are you kidding me? How do you even do anything with that? To this day, neither one of them, I mean, one's allergic, but the other one still will not eat fish. And she is very capable of eating fish. She'll be fine.
My grandson is very picky. I mean, there's sometimes you're like, do you even eat? Because like there'd be nothing that he has eaten all day long. And if he does get down to the dinner table, it's like, okay, just a little bit here and there, and then I'm full, I'm done. And I'm like, are you sure? Like I didn't see you eat all day, and he's like, oh, my stomach hurts. And that's always what he says. He's like, my stomach hurts. But I remember going back to like the sensory with the clothes and stuff. He would always say that his shoes make his feet feel like they're on fire. And he would literally take them off in the car and like toss them through the whole car. Like, I am not wearing these. Like and so we had to take him to like an occupational therapist, and they would work with him and on the textures of his clothes and the socks and the shoes. And thank goodness, because he would refuse to wear shoes anywhere. And the loud sound of the bathroom, the dryer, he would go into the bathroom and he would like cover his ears because it was so loud. And I don't think that people realize what a sensory processing disorder is, because it can affect so many different levels, to taste, to feel, to sounds, So yeah, I remember vividly those things with my grandson.
Well, I think
Yeah.
too, that brings a very big thing to attention because sometimes we miss what the actual problem is. We think they have an aversion to going to the bathroom. There's something
Mhm.
wrong inside with their organs, like they could get a kidney infection, whatever. And we're looking at the problem and not realizing what the problem is. Sometimes for our kids, sitting down at the table, that was in our home, that was a very big rule. You sit down, we have dinner
Mhm.
together, and then we have a child that he likes to walk over to the table, take a bite, chew side to side. He's just kind of pacing a little bit. He has so much going on in his mind. To actually sit down is like overload. But if he can just do a little bit of rocking, move back and forth, then he's successful with eating. But if you try to make him sit down in that chair for the entire time, and
Yeah.
these are major things for parents, we have to make sure they're fed, we have to make sure they're clothed, and that they're clean. Just those 3 things can be, like, so impossible. I've seen parents, like, with the shoe thing, their child is barefoot and like dad's carrying the shoes, he's like, we have shoes for him, just like to show the world. Like, I don't know
Right.
why he won't wear them, but he does own shoes. We don't think this is okay or trying to hurt him. But
Right.
I think there's so much pressure on parents that somebody that possibly has like a typical child, they never face any of those things, and they don't understand why you're not feeding your child right or clothing them correctly. And when you think about the socks, we get to January, it is freezing out. While
Right.
you've got the socks on them, they got in the car, you're ready to step out. Now they have no socks on and they put their shoes back on. And you're like, so everybody thinks I dressed myself and didn't dress my child right, but they're happy. They don't have socks on. Going from the car to the door, nothing is going to happen to them. They will be perfectly fine with no socks on. If they took their coat off and they're walking 30 feet, it's not a big deal. I think we worry about those things so much. And sometimes it's just not the typical answer. Like, you make them put their socks on and you make them sit down and eat. You got to try to get into their world a little bit. And what can we do to make you happy enough to go from point A to point B?
I think though, I think that we are a society that is very judgy. And I think that so much of the pressure that so many parents feel is from that judginess. So, oh, you don't dress your kid right. Oh, look at the outfit you put your kid in. Isn't that the same thing they wore yesterday? Or, oh, that doesn't match. That looks horrible. Who put that together? Why don't they have a coat on? Why don't they have mittens on? You know, um, and and that pressure of being judged, and people are so quick to call and report. Like it feels like there are some people out there. I mean, look, we had that huge rash of people calling the police on people, like someone's sleeping in the library or in the lobby and they don't belong here. Like, what's wrong sometimes with, like, my grandmother used to say, if you can't say anything nice, don't say anything at all. What's wrong with like asking a parent if they need help instead of calling CYS on a parent and just making their life harder, making the comment, gossiping behind their back, but I think that that's where a lot of pressure comes from parents about the way our kids walk out of the house. I've had like my own friends on like social media and stuff commenting about, oh, a kid was at dinner with headphones on and with his face in the screen the whole time, and doesn't even know how to have a conversation. And I know that because I'm mouthy, I know that I've kind of commented back, like, do you think that maybe it was too loud in the restaurant for the child, but the parent wants to give the child the opportunity to be in a social setting in a way that they can participate? And so luckily, I remember like the one time that I did it, one of the times that I did it, someone was like, oh, I hadn't thought of that before. So I do think that it's okay to say, and I think that if you're in a situation where people are kind of being judgy, um, to use that privilege that you have at the moment to say something like, oh, I remember when my kids were like that. Oh, I totally get it. You're doing a great job. you know to be supportive of the parent and maybe shut down some of the negative stuff.
Oh, yeah. And it's so easy to just look at a family and say, oh, they shouldn't be doing this, shouldn't be doing that. The next time you see something that don't look typical to you, try to open your eyes a little bit, see what that family's going through. And if you've been in that situation, when you walk by and you feel like you want to say something, tell them you see them. Great job. Good for you. I'm glad you got to have dinner out with your family. And sometimes you see those situations And parents have to practice these things. It could be the first time they've ever been around that many people, and it could be these are strangers. When our kids, we protect them so much and we keep their circle small. Something as big as going to a restaurant where a complete stranger walks over to you, like, it is no joke of how some of our kids respond to that. I've literally had my child just sink down into the booth and, like, disappear because some strange lady asked her if she wanted water. And she just, like, did not like, why would somebody ask me if I want water? Like, we know how the world operates. Our children don't know how the world operates. We had a really good opportunity with a friend of ours. I was talking with her about just how hard it is to take our little ones out and them not know how to behave. Like, and it's hard for us to remember how we learned how to behave in public because we just always behaved in public, whether that was fear of our parents or we weren't going to get to stay and they would make us leave. Like, none of those typical things work with a lot of our kids. And her and I, there was differences in what, like, the behavior outcome would be, but she was worried, like, she was never going to be able to take her child, like, in public. So we kind of did a little thing where we practiced. We're not going in hungry. We're going to go in and we're going to get drinks. Everybody's going to, like, maybe get a milkshake or something that don't matter. So, and I say don't matter, like the idea that everybody's hungry and we need to eat.
Right.
And
Right now. Yeah.
yeah, so, like, we took that opportunity to practice. And believe me, our kids were under 10 when we started doing this and going to the restaurant and, like, we have to sit still. I can tell you the first 5 times were awful. They were awful for the kids, awful for the parents, but we kept going back. And, like, sometimes we would have to hold that child's hand, like, the whole time to make them just stay sitting in the booth, in the chairs, all that kind of stuff. We tried to go when it wasn't lunchtime, when it wasn't like that the waitresses would be really busy and all the rush and, um but, like, that helped just to have a friend that would go in it with you. Like, I'm gonna help you with your kids, you're gonna help me with mine. We're gonna kinda practice this and just see where we land without anything being on the line of everybody actually needing food.
Yeah. Yeah. Good. That's a good idea.
I, rem- I remember with my daughter, she has oppositional defiant disorder. And I remember for the longest time, I would not be able to go to the grocery store with her. The grocery store trips would end up being a complete meltdown because in her head, in her mind, it was like, I want this and I want it now. I want. And it was like, no, you can't have that. But it was like complete meltdowns that at one point we were starting to have family bays come in and they would go into the stores with us to kind of walk with us to try to help us try to teach her how when we go to the grocery stores that we're not going to get what's at the end of the aisle or at the end of the cash register aisle. But I vividly remember like walking to the back of the store and like going into the dog, food aisle and kind of like waiting for her to like kind of calm down because she was just absolutely kicking and screaming. And I'm just like, I'm like so embarrassed going, everybody's looking at me. Everybody's going to like go, what are you doing to that child? Poor child. That mother is horrible. And that feeling that I had was so overwhelming, but my child was also very overwhelmed with emotions. And I was just trying to let her get through that big emotion before, exiting that aisle. I didn't want to just stop everything and just like take her out. I wanted to get through that moment and let her get through it. And then we would go through and finish it out. And then we would leave. but but yes, those emotions of going through the grocery store and restaurants are very hard sometimes for parents. And I also remember being a parent in that checkout line and seeing another parent behind me having a difficult time like I did. And I commented saying that one parent was actually criticizing the family. And me and the cash register lady, cashier said they're having a difficult time. And the cashier said they're on the spectrum and he is having a difficult time. So we corrected the person behind us by saying it's not their fault that they're having a difficult time. So don't be that, like Christina said, like judgy kind of person. Help them to understand why somebody might be acting that way.
Now, I remember getting advice like, well, when you go to the grocery store, if your child has a meltdown and they won't be good, just leave your cart and walk out.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that might work for some kids.
Yeah.
But it doesn't work for everybody. And it doesn't work in many situations. I lived in a small town. I worked at the grocery store. And what do you do when you need groceries? Like, it's not like a ton of us go to the grocery store because, okay, besides my Wegmans obsession, but it's not like a ton of us go to the grocery store because we're like, oh, wouldn't it be nice to like plan super, super far in advance? Like, often when you get to the grocery store, it's because there's a couple things at least that you need. And you can't just walk out of the grocery store every single time they kind of have a meltdown. So sometimes you get advice from people that sounds like, all right, I'm gonna try that. Sometimes you get advice from therapists who don't themselves have children who behave like this. And honestly, sometimes the advice works and it's great. We got your favorite cereal, we've got cookies, and we got ice cream bars because, these are just, it's not like we're going to go home and eat them all. It's going to be for, over the course of a week or 2 weeks. So there were a couple things in the cart that you were excited about. The child had a meltdown and we left. And that night, oh, I'm sorry, we don't have the cookies. Remember, we left them in the grocery store because we were having a tough time, in the grocery store.
Yeah.
Maybe that works. Maybe that works once, but the next time you go to do it, it may not work for a whole bunch of reasons. So I think that you have to really have kind of like a whole plethora of techniques to try.
Cool.
Exactly. You've got to put on your tool belt and kind of have some of those things. So, you could do everything right. You could follow all the advice. Don't go to the grocery store when they're hungry. Don't go to the grocery store when it's busy. Don't go to the grocery store when they're tired or they've had a bad day. Don't go to the grocery store like when you have to get like a whole bunch of things with your kiddo. And it all may not work. And I think too, as a parent, again, we get frustrated because now I'm doing everything that they've suggested. I absolutely can't go home without milk because we have nothing at all to eat in the grocery store or in the house. I've got to buy something. And then we start to feel our feelings, which we do get to feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so we've tried everything and sometimes it's just hard. Sometimes it is just really hard. And I think that it's important for us to acknowledge that you could do everything, you could try everything. And sometimes it just doesn't work because it's just that kind of day.
And we have circumstances that change. You might go in and you have like 3 times that everything was okay. You managed, you got through. And now you have a situation like you're talking about, Christina, of this is a must have. We have to do this or there won't be breakfast in the morning. There won't be milk for the cereal or any cereal. And maybe right after school, they didn't get the break that they needed when they come home. We ended up at the ER for whatever reason, or the garage, the car was breaking down, whatever. And like you weren't able to put all those things in place that you could have the 3 times before that. And now you're 10 o'clock at night. Yes, we were out way past bedtime. Nobody's happy. We had to go to the pharmacy. Now we're getting, milk and cereal just so we can have breakfast in the morning. So we have to do this. And you have people looking at you like, one, she got her kids out after 10 o'clock. They're all a mess and have been crying.
Yeah.
Everything is as bad as it could be. And I had, after experiences like that, and my grandmother had raised a child with autism, and the best advice she ever gave me, and I still say this to this day, what people think about you is none of your business. Let it roll
Yeah.
off your shoulder, let it go. They are not living your life. They don't know all of the things you deal with, what your children deal with. It really doesn't matter what they think. And it's hard to wrap your mind around that because the people that give advice and, oh, my child would never do that. And I would have taken them outside or to the other aisle and whipped their bottoms and wouldn't be
Yep.
happening. It's like, that's not our
Yeah, yeah.
world. That's not our real world, and it's just, there are a lot of really good ideas and things that you can try. Thank God there's delivery now and Walmart pickup, like you pull in and you can have all your groceries put in. Sometimes that's not even an option for you, like the delivery only delivers like centrally in town. If you're right outside, it's like pizza. If you can't get pizza delivered to your house, you're certainly not going to get groceries delivered to your house. So,
And sometimes realistically, you don't have the extra money
yeah,
to have that done.
yeah,
Because it does cost extra.
yeah,
And you don't have the opportunity to walk through the store and comparison shop.
yeah,
So yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
I had I feel like I did as best as I could, and I did things in a certain way. With the idea of food to begin with, I thought, okay, I'll just make them what they want. I'll make each person what they want. Well, that lasts roughly 2 weeks before you can afford it and you don't have the time or energy. And then where is this going? Is this forever? Because I can't sustain this. So my answer always was, if you don't eat what I made, you are allowed to have a bowl of cereal. So cereal was your option. And my kids like jokingly tell me someday if I end up in a nursing home, they're going to tell them that I only like cereal. Like, don't give me anything but cereal. So it's just like a running joke, but that's what our choices had to be. It was this or the cereal or you go have nothing. And
Yep.
it sounds harsh, like they had cereal
Yeah,
last night.
but it's food. It's
Yeah.
food, and yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And once my kids started to get older, I always have a notepad on the fridge. So, when they open something, we put it on the list to pick it up again. But I would say to them, "What do you want to eat this week?" And, they would give me the couple things that they wanted to eat. Okay, great. That's what I'm going to cook. So, sometimes that would work, getting them involved. And sometimes that does work, getting them involved. I think my mom was the same way with the whole, if you don't want to eat dinner, you could have a bowl of cereal. And I think that that's a they're still being offered food, but you're not catering so much where you're making a full meal for everyone.
God, I wish I was able to do that when I was younger. It was always like Melissa said earlier, like if you don't eat what's on your plate, you don't get anything else. And would it be there in the next day? Could be. But what have we learned from that? There's a lot of things that we've learned when parents say, you're going to eat what's on your plate and nothing else, or everything on your plate. What happens then? You kind of obsess about food, or the opposite. You obsess that you can't have that much food, and it doesn't help, right? Why not just let them have a bowl of cereal? Why be so strict to the point where you're not going to be able to, give them something at least to eat if they're not going to choose what you made? But I've been told that.
Absolutely.
I
And
think
it's
it really
hard.
just I think it really just comes down to letting everyone know and reminding ourselves that you're doing the best you can,
Yeah.
and sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to. sometimes your kiddos go through a cycle where they don't want to eat anything at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then it never fails. And I think I remember my mom saying, like, she would feed me at home and we'd get to my grandma's house and my grandma would be like, "Are you hungry?" And I'd be like, "I am starving," you know.
Right.
Or, you know, the kids do that all the time. But, you know, your kiddo may be going through a rough patch where they won't wear like jeans because they don't like the buttons. They won't wear
Mhm.
socks because they don't like the seam. They don't want to wear a coat because it's too big and bulky. They don't want to eat dinner. Um, Hopefully it's a cycle and it will pass. Um, Try and have a couple options. You know, talk to people, give us a call, talk to an FSP or even just friends. If you have friends who are kind of open to be like, "Oh yeah, when that happened, this is what I tried." But I think that for us as parents, sometimes what may happen is that we just get so worried and we put so much on ourselves because we know that there's people out there judging, that just adds to the stress. And sometimes we dig our heels in just because society says, or we're worried about what somebody else might say.
Yeah. You literally just talk, I was going to say this earlier about the jeans and the pants and the tag. Like my grandson, I would purchase him nice like slacks and nice, tied shoes, for Christmas and holidays and things like that. And that was something that I wanted to give him as a nice outfit, but that outfit was so restrictive to him. And I needed to learn myself as a grandparent and as a mother that my expectations or what, would look nice for him is not what he liked. And so anything that was, with an elastic waistband, elastic on the bottom, shoes that were not stiff, they were very restrictive to him. And so, like, Christmas morning, it doesn't matter if they're not dressed to the hilt for Christmas morning. Let them be a little bit flexible and learn what does not work for them. Because that was a hard lesson for me. I'm like, I bought all these clothes and it's like, he doesn't want to wear any of them. I'm like, okay, I get it now. Wear your sweatpants. I don't care.
Yeah. I think
No.
too, a lot of parents have big issues with haircuts. So a lot of
Yeah.
times we have our kids walking around, they don't have that neat trim haircut, little
Mhm.
curls going up over the ears, down in the eyes, and they can look how some of us were raised, like they can look like they're unkept, like, oh, they're due for a haircut.
Mhm.
Haircuts can be the hardest thing to navigate for a lot of our kids. And if you can find someone, like even putting a post on social media, do you know of a barber, a hairdresser, someone who can take the time? I mean, we have a lot of great people around here where they will do one child at a time. They're the ones that have the appointment. There's nobody else in there. If that takes an hour to do a 5-minute trim, they will work with them for an hour.
Aw.
Finding your people that will help you, and being okay with letting the hair go until you can get to that person. Like, there's no rule that states that you're a good parent if you've checked the box that they have a haircut. If it's too far in their eyes, put their hair up, let them wear a ball cap, whatever it is. But I think there's a lot of pressure around haircuts, and that could be like torture for our kids. The sounds, the cape,
The
the
sound.
everything. It's a lot.
My grandson would not go to the hairdresser because of the buzz sound in his
Oh no.
head. So he would get very nervous. And so I took him one time and he was telling the lady, I want it to cut short, but I don't want to hear it. And she's like, this one is very quiet. And she showed it to him and she turned it on and, and that relieved him a little bit and made it more able for him to sit there and get that haircut, because she took that time. She's like, this isn't loud, because he would just go like this and he would be so scared to sit in that chair. I have a question though about haircuts. What do you do when the child cuts their own hair repeatedly? Like, my granddaughter has just cut her hair for like the fourth time as the bangs just grew out and now they're like this short again. And I'm like, oh my gosh.
I'm telling you, that was probably I will say 100% that was a very difficult stage we went through.
Ah,
And the
I
first
know.
time it happened, like, she came to me and she was like fessing up, like, okay, so I cut my hair. And when you take it for what it is, but sometimes you are so busy, like, you don't notice that. If it's not like right here, you're not really going to notice it. So she's like, turns around, I see the back of her head, and I'm like, oh my gosh. I'm like, why did you do that? I don't know. Like,
No.
and of course, my reaction was like, oh my goodness. Like, I had a huge reaction. And then she started crying. She said, okay, I'll go get the rest of it. She
Rest
goes,
of it.
yeah, underneath the couch and starts pulling out all this hair. And she had
Oh my
hair
God.
down to her bum. She had like the longest hair. I was just like so devastated. Of course, we try to have a talk. I'm thinking rationally, this is, something that we can overcome. No, this was not a one and done. This was, if I have
Yeah.
access to scissors, even little, that barely cut paper, she was trying to cut hair. And
Mhm.
honestly, the only thing that I found to do was take every kind of cutting instrument and put it under lock and key because it just wasn't, she wasn't going to stop. And
Right.
I cannot tell you a rational reason why she did it or why she wasn't stopping. But that
Mhm.
was the only thing I could do was just find every little scissor. I mean, I
Mm.
wasn't even thinking, the little scissors that cut the little designs on edges, anything,
Mhm.
anything. She would just cut. And the gum in the hair, like, I had banned gum from our house. Like,
Right.
you are not ever allowed to have gum. That was like rough years with the gum. It was like contraband. But
Slime over
I
here. It's
did
been
learn
slime.
with two pieces of ice cube, one on each side, some peanut butter. We could get that out of
Better.
there. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I think that sometimes you just go through those phases and I think that if you're going through a phase with your kiddo where they won't get their hair cut and it's like a school thing where they've got to have a collar and maybe if they're a boy the hair can't be below a collar. I think that even if it's a private school, if they accept any money for anything at all, a food program, anything, you as long as they accept public funds, um, you can ask for a 504. So a lot of religious schools, a lot of private schools don't, but definitely, talk to your family doctor if you're seeing a therapist about how they just don't want their haircut. How that's really you wouldn't think, but it's really painful for
Mhm.
for people. I kind of hesitate to say it because I don't like the idea of us kind of insulating ourselves. But for a little while, if you're finding that places that you go are particularly judgy and not welcoming for your child, maybe it's best if you think your child isn't benefiting from it. It's causing an inordinate amount of stress for you, for your child. Maybe step away from that place for a little while. If it's like a sports team or, like a community program or anything like that, where they just don't seem to be very welcoming right now, step away. If it's like a church, there are some really great welcoming churches out there, and maybe look for one that's a little bit more welcoming. Congregations go through times where maybe they have more kiddos and then less kiddos. And if yours has maybe less kiddos, they just don't get it, or they don't have children's programs. Maybe there's another one that does. So some of it is really just kind of finding spaces where your children are welcome, so that you can have them out without having that undue societal pressure that does affect them. And I think too, for us, does affect us, because we feel judged. And unfortunately, right now, always, society is a little harsher on moms than dads. So maybe once they cut their bangs and they've got like a giant chunk out of their hair or something, send them out with dad. People might not be quite so judgy to dad when they're
Right.
And I think too, as parents, we want to advocate for our child. We want to educate people around us. And that is a beautiful, wonderful thing. There are times that the burden of that on the parent to educate everyone and try to instill in them what you have in your heart for your child can be such a burden. Not that you don't want to do it, but maybe you've done it 25 times today. It's okay to step away and just say, I'm not taking on the job of making sure another adult that I'm around has manners, that
Yeah.
this whole organization changes how they treat people. Not that you don't want to do that. And you will look back and see the hundreds and hundreds of times that you did that. If you step away because it's just today, you're just not, it's fine. You do not
Yeah.
have to educate the entire world. You do not have to hand out cards. And if you do, I'm not judging that. But the burden shouldn't be on you to fix society.
That's right.
Take care of your
Yeah, some
child and
days
your
we're just not
family.
up to it.
Yeah, that's right.
That can include family
Yeah.
members, because how often are we trying to justify, trying to explain? And it's a lot on us as a parent to try to do that with even family
Yeah.
members, that they don't understand what is going on in our house behind those closed doors and how stressed we can be. Oftentimes I would have to do that, and it would be exhausting.
Yep.
Oh, they look fine. Well, you only see them on Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's not fair.
I've had people say to me, you're catering too much to them. I had learned one of the things that really worked for us for the grocery store was having them be part of it, sharing that. Just as an example, I have this much money. This is what is on the list. Let's look at this list. We are going in. We're starting on this side of the grocery store. We're going to go from this aisle to this aisle. When we leave here, this is what we're doing. And it was for them, they needed that plan. They needed to know what to expect, that we weren't going to go to the toy department. We weren't going to this. And I've had people that's ridiculous. They just go wherever you go. And I just feel like when I talk to them and explain what the plan was, oh, we're stopping to get gas. We're going to do this. That made our day flow better. I know that my parents got in the car. I was put in the back seat and I went wherever they went. I was not to question where we were going and why we weren't doing this, why I couldn't have that, whatever that looked like. But I just always explained everything to them, and it worked for us,
Yeah, I love that. I love that. Well, ladies, it looks like we're out of time. So we'd love to hear from our audience. What are some of your tricky spots? And, how are you handling it? Or what are some of your tricky spots and you'd like us to talk about it? And we'll brainstorm for you, with you. If you want us to brainstorm with you, give us a call and work with one of our FSPs. If you want us to brainstorm for you, send us an email and we'll talk about it at some point in time. But that's it for today. Have a great day, ladies. Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.